Starting in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Different role for George today. Paul as winner of Wales done, but of course his man Lance Armstrong is still in the main field, but riding this his only classic of the year so far.
Well, for Georgie Hincapie, you can't let a man like Hincapie get into a breakaway like this on this kind of a course, because he's the kind of man who could win, which is why we didn't see him ride last week Liège-Bastogne-Liège. They've saved him to bring him back to be competitive here. And you can see Rabobank are not too happy with the situation, having only Karsten Kroon in the first group, Phil, because they're putting the hammer down. There at the back of the group is the Dutch national champion, rides for Mercury Viatel this year, and that is Leon van Bon, about 5 or 6 from the rear.
Well, this is the most interesting classic race. People always believe that Holland is a flat country. Nothing could be further from the truth down this corner. 1 minute 54 from the leaders back to the main field. But this is the up and down area which we call Little Switzerland in this part of Holland. Very tough, great area for cycle racing and for cycle touring. And not surprisingly, that the Rabobanks are going to stir up trouble today, because they always feel this race is their property.
At the front here is André Schmiel of Lotto, trying to accelerate, get a bit more impetus into this leading group of riders, and he seems to actually split 1 or 2 men off the back. You can see once again weather not great in this part of Europe at the start of the season, and in fact at the start of the race this morning, because of that foot and mouth disease which is raging throughout Europe, all of the team cars were disinfected, as well as the riders' wheels as well, Phil.
Yes, and in fact, it's really only a 9th-hour decision to say this race could go on at all, but at least it's known and recognised as being important as part of Holland's sporting heritage these days. So they have allowed it to go on, but officials have sprayed all the cars. The farmland has been roped off in places. You're not allowed to step onto the sidewalks, and the riders have been told they must not go into the woods for natural breaks or anything like that.
Number 22 there is Jeroen Blijlevens. He also was earlier in that leading group with his teammate, but he's obviously a little bit allergic to the climbs here around the bottom part of Limburg.
Yeah, the guy going off with him is Glenn de Hollander, and so Lotto losing men there. And this breakaway thinning out rather dramatically now at the front. Looking down there, we've got just 8 riders left. There were 13 of them, and things looking a little bit rough. At 10 degrees Celsius, that's 50 degrees Fahrenheit at the start today. As you can see, it's been damping occasionally too. The roads are still wet. There is André Schmiel, and a man perhaps not suited entirely to this classic, but he's certainly a man for the classic races.
Karsten Kroon, the Rabobank rider on the far side, was a man that was made famous to us last year by wearing the King of the Mountains jersey in the Giro d'Italia for an awful long time. In fact, he had a very bad injury and kept riding because he had such a large advantage in that King of the Mountains competition. A very courageous rider. Moving forward, the team manager there of Faso Bortolo coming up to give Hortensia a little chatting to at the moment, because they are in a reasonably good situation with Francesco Casagrande in the main field behind. But once we come to the more repetitive nature of this year's Amstel Gold Race, the big names will certainly come to the front. In the past, the Amstel Gold Race has actually nipped across into Belgium, and because of that foot and mouth disease, they decided to keep the race totally inside the Dutch borders. It was actually the Belgians that didn't want the incursion, and I think it's actually made it a slightly tougher race, Phil, because we do 2 circuits which include the Kutenberg, which they go over on 2 occasions.
And we're still to see that climb. Actually, that's a 22% climb, a very steep climb indeed. And there's a lot of US Postal riders here being shadowed by Leon van Bon, the Mercury boy. These are great rivals now as the champion goes through. And Lance Armstrong just caught a glimpse of him over the shoulder there of Leon van Bon.
Schmiel on the front of the group, very nervous. He wants to reduce the size of this group here. Very upset with his race there in the Paris-Roubaix just 2 weeks ago. He was crashed in the first section of cobblestones, had to chase for the whole race, and rode back incredibly, Phil, to finish. I think it was in 8th place at the end of the day. A marvellous comeback from that man, who really is a gutsy rider. At the age of 38, he still doesn't want to give up.
No, absolutely incredible. Just look, Paul, at all of the Rabobank riders, and they're even getting help here from Theo de Roy, the team manager's coming up alongside as well. Pass a few words of advice. Puffing and blowing from the riders here. They've got men in the breakaway, but it's not the men they would want, I would assume.
That was a pretty slick move there, you noticed, by Eric Decker. That's actually an illegal move that he took on board there. Theo de Roy had a small drink just inside the armrest of the car, and being a very slick professional, he grabbed it, and there's no chance at all of the referee seeing that, although we managed to pick it up on television.
And of course we're not telling anybody. As we watch now, the men from Rabobank keep the pace up here. 2, 4, 6, 7 riders left at the front, 8 riders left at the front of the original 13, and they're under pressure. Now, how much pressure are they under? Because this breakaway was 8 minutes up, and it's nothing like that now. What, 40 seconds?
40 seconds or so, and not a really big group behind either. The pressure on the front coming from Rabobank. All of their men are in here. Eric Decker, Michael Bogard. Michael Bogard is number 1 for this team today. They will be looking after him absolutely and hoping to put him in an ideal position when we come into the climbs towards the end, because he rode exceptionally well last weekend in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But for the Dutch team, this is the most important day of their year. There are a lot of small races here in Holland, Phil, which these riders shine in after the Tour de France, which is the only World Cup event and the only real major one-day race that they have.
That's right, it really is. You think in the hotbed of cycling in Holland they'd be closing roads every weekend for major races, but in fact the opposite is the truth. This is the only single-day race. They totally close the roads for racing here in Holland, and it's a big one, 254 kilometres. As we race back to Maastricht now, and we've got 62.5 kilometres still to run.
Well, Andre Schmiel is pretty nervous. He obviously knows the main field is coming back, and very shortly we'll be hitting a fairly steep climb, so he wants to make sure he gets there early before the main field does, and hopes that a small group will come off in front of the main field and start the ball rolling once again. A big attack by him, and he's lodged 1 or 2 riders off the back at the moment. In fact, Kessler here, the Telecom rider, put into a bit of difficulty, but Georgie Hincapie riding really high on his early Classics performance with that Gonwevelgem win and 4th place in Paris-Roubaix. And it's good to see Freddie Rodriguez riding to the front. We haven't seen an awful lot of Freddie so far this year. He did actually just a couple of days ago get 3rd place in the Grand Prix Pinot Cerami, which is a very good ride by him. And I think this is the kind of climbing race that should suit Freddie Rodriguez, and it's nice to see him at the front.
Yes, he's had a couple of top 3 places this year, and I'm sure he's building up now. He's been a proud wearer of the Championship of the USA jersey. He had 7 wins last year, and the majority of those coming after he picked up his title. So he's looking forward to defending it perhaps in Philadelphia in the month of June this year, as he sits onto the back now. He's got a powerful sprint when he gets a chance to use it, as young Fred. He's now 27.5 years of age.
Another one of the big transfers of the winter season as well, because last year he was a member of the huge Mappé Quick-Step team, and he decided to move across with the Domo Farm Frites Belgian division that split across there, and I think he's made a very good decision to stay with them.
So Fred Rodriguez sitting on the back, looking quite cool and collected. He'd been in the breakaway a long time today. This break settling in after 60 kilometres, 38 miles. And now we're heading up to inside 60 to go, so they've had a long day in the saddle out front, thinned down rather drastically over the last few miles, and there's still some tough climbs to come, to say the least, as we run down back towards the finish in Maastricht. And again, typical of Holland, these very narrow roads here right down by the Belgian borders, and not just the Belgian borders but the German borders as well, as this breakaway stays out of sight, but the chase is very, very definitely on. And I think Fred is hanging off the back here, knowing that the catch is inevitable now.
Well, these roads are actually not too bad at all, but when the Amstel Gold Race does come through a lot of the towns here in Holland, they are very dangerous indeed, because there's a lot of road furniture, as they call it nowadays, circular roundabouts and directional islands to try and direct the traffic, but it makes it very difficult for the bike riders. This is the Bemellerberg, and it's only 4.5%, but Hincapie's at the front there trying to dislodge 1 or 2 riders, and the only thing these guys are doing right now, Phil, is actually delaying the catch, because it's certain to happen quite shortly.
Big George there, possibly thinking of taking Fred's jersey off him in Philadelphia in June as the national champion. George has won that title as well, of course.
He's won that title and been disqualified as well.
Absolutely.
It was unbelievable, the scenario that day when he was awarded the jersey, and it was only at the press conference he was told that he wasn't the legal wearer because he'd been disqualified after the judges had taken into account a complaint that he was paced back into the race after a late puncture.
Which he was, never disputed, but the fact was it was a little bit late to tell him perhaps. 8 riders then still survive down there. Amongst them is Carsten Kroon. I think he's the only Rabobank rider left in this breakaway now. Fred Rodriguez, Paolini is still down there, and Ortenzi, and certainly George Hincapie. Kessler is the man from Telecom setting the pace. And another little climb here, and spring just about bursting, but we're just on into May now, just tickling May, and the weather here still very unseasonal like.
I think you're right about Freddie Rodriguez. He certainly seems to be very often at the back of that group there. The big work here on the same climb now still being done by the Rabobank riders. They're obviously trying to pull it all back together because they're banking everything, I think, today on one card, and that's a card of Michael Bogert.
Coming to the back, there's the gap. The first time we've had an official check at 55 seconds, so a little bit more than I thought. It looked closer than that. Huge crowds, of course, Holland, but many of the spectators have not been allowed to get to their favourite vantage points because of the restriction of movement in the countryside in Holland because of the foot and mouth disease, this disease which runs through the hoofed animals in Britain, and it's been reported over here as well, so they're taking no chances.
Quick glimpse at the back of the group there. I saw the man Fernando Escartin looking quite good on the far side there. Gianluca Bortolami, the winner of the Tour of Flanders, somewhat surprise winner of the Tour of Flanders, but since then he rode quite well in Paris-Roubaix, and hoping to ride a little higher in the standings today with the possibility of regaining the lead in the World Cup. But he's going to have to come up against this very strong armada. There are 6 riders from Rabobank here at the front of the main field. The 6th one there you can see in a red jersey is Marcus Zuberg, the champion of Switzerland.
Well, clearly the Rabobank boys not too confident in their man Carsten Kroon up there because they're emanating the chase. Carsten has never won a bike race, but he certainly distinguished himself last year in the Giro d'Italia because he was an early leader in 3 competitions there, the Intergiro, the Points and King of the Mountains leader. And so he's obviously got good form as well.
Well, they will be happy in the fact, Phil, that they do have at least one man represented in the lead group. They've always taken this as being their pride and joy, their performances here at the Amstel Gold Race. And in fact, their team manager, Jan Raas, won it so many times that at one time it was nicknamed the Amstel Gold Raas.
Yes, absolutely right. There's Andre Smeel, a bit of a shout coming from the group here as they want more speed, more speed. They're still under pressure, but they're still trying to keep this breakaway going. They would really like now a little bit of an injection of strength from the back, but they certainly don't want everybody up there. As we look here now at Paolini sitting on the back, Schmil is just in front of him, and I think it was Hincapie got to the front, was it, Paul?
That's Hincapie on the front right now, leading away on the descent. It's a bit surprising, really, to see Andre Schmil in a lead group like this of non-major contenders for the finish of the Amstel Gold Race, and he may well have been thinking he could surprise all the other guys. What has happened with the race being so difficult so far is we've actually reduced the size of the main field, and when we go back there you can see there are only about 45 riders left in the group, but the big advantage must go over to Rabobank because they've got a lot of men there.
These beautiful Dutch country lanes here as we course through them, and they rise and kick a little bit, and then the steep ones as well. Whoops, up straight through the back comes Kessler. He hasn't been left behind as he makes sure he's staying in the group. There's still one missing, but they've sent away the service car, which to me means the race is now closing in fast.
Well, these riders now are approaching the very repetitive nature of the climbs to come in the southern part of Holland here, just outside of Maastricht. And Georgie Hincapie is still looking absolutely magnificent. He's still got the form that took him to that victory at Gont-Wevelgem. 56.4 kilometers to go to the finishing line, and that should take them around about an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes. They're going through the area here where the feeding station should have been, and I think that is probably an unofficial feeding station because a lot of these teams have a lot of friends and supporters in this part of the world, and they nip out to these small towns and try and slip up a warm cup of tea, especially on days like this.
So this little select group, they've dropped one rider now, and the one rider they've lost is Carsten Kroon we were talking about. So the Rabobank will get really into top gear when they realise they've got nobody up here now. The gap is less than 30 seconds. Big crowds in the towns and little villages surrounding Holland here, and a beautiful clean country it is too. Sun is just peeping through after a chilly start this morning. George Hincapie, used to being in the leading groups in the classics now, had a wonderful build-up to this event, especially with his win in Gent-Wevelgem and the remarkable 4th place he had for a second time in Paris-Roubaix.
These riders looking a bit nervous now, Filke, insistently looking over their shoulders behind to see what movements are happening. And they know once that yellow car gets sent forward, they know that they're pretty close to getting caught, because the judges and the referees try to keep the gap between the leading group of riders and the main field as clean as possible. This is the main field, and certainly they will be put under pressure now by Rabobank because of the fact that Carson Kroon has been dropped from the leading group, and that will not be a situation they will be too happy with at all. But it will be good as we look at the back of the group here. This is another rider from Team Coast. Team Coast is one of the new teams on the block here. Fernando Escartin a little bit further forward there. Team Coast is a team that's looking for selection, and selection should come in around about 10 days time right now, and they've actually opened up their advantage, Phil. The Kop group, which is the Dutch word for the leading group of riders, now 102 ahead of the main field.
Well, I wasn't expecting a reversal there. I thought it was curtains, so you better call in the yellow car again, because it looks as though this group now has found itself some firepower. Andre Schmill never short of some strong legs, always willing to try, and George too. I'm not too sure what George's tactics are here, Paul, because he's really under the command of Lance Armstrong today, isn't he?
Well, Armstrong will want to try himself out. The only reason Lance has come to this race is, first of all, because he loves to race in Holland, and secondly, because it's the first part of his build-up to the Tour de France. He's used this race as a test in the past, and in fact, he finished second to Michael Bogert in a photo finish after the Dutchman sat on his tail for the last 20 or so kilometers. Armstrong would certainly very much like a revenge. Last year he didn't ride too well here in the Amstel Gold Race, and it was thought that maybe he wasn't in the ideal form building up for his Tour de France. This is Leon Van Bon, I think, who's just leapt out of the group here now, trying to surprise his former teammates here. Van Bon, a magnificent bike rider, always aggressive, took out a stage at the Tour de France last year, didn't finish it, but did end up signing through the interseason for the new Mercury Viatel team. There, in fact, you can see 184 is Fernando Escartin. You can always recognize that crab-like position.
And here's a little bit of a move coming here from Van Bon. This is how he did it, taking his place from down the line. That's the perfect place to launch an attack when the domestiques are working hard at the front, but then you've got to keep on and hang on in there. He's got a little bit of a gap at the moment. Nice to see a reaction coming from the race now. They're beginning to run down into the vital 50 kilometers to go here. This is the champion of Holland racing on home territory, and Eric Dekker has caught his tail.
Well, Eric Dekker today wearing the unlucky number 13. There was one Dutchman, in fact, Jerry Kneteman, who would refuse to wear the number 13. He was so superstitious about it, but Eric Dekker doesn't seem to have worried about that today. And in fact, the rules in international cycling say that if you don't want to wear number 13, you can actually request a different number.
Well, that sounds fair enough, especially if you are superstitious. Back to George Hincapie at the front here, Paolo Paolini on his inside. Andre Schmill is probably the best accomplished man in this group. Certainly last year he was voted Belgium's top cyclist of the year for his brilliant season yet again, starting with his win in the Tour de Flanders, second in Paris Tours, runner-up in the World Cup. A title, of course, he was defending. He was the World Cup holder back in '99.
Almost taking out victory in the World Championships because he attacked so many times over the last 5 kilometers there. He deserved to win that championships, and what a story that would have been. This is Motorbike 1 and Motorbike 2 on the right. You can see now Eric Dekker and Leon Van Bon trying to get across there. They've been joined here by one of the riders from Lotto, and that may well be one of the riders like Mario Arts trying to get across right now.
Well, we'll try and get an idea on him when we can, but he's certainly got there at the moment. And if it is, no, that's Serge Baguet, Paul, who's just latched on. And so Baguet is the rider from Lotto. They're the chasing group, but it doesn't matter anymore. It's academic. There's a few more caught up again. Now we're back in the main field here. But counterattacks like this are surely going to shut down that breakaway.
These guys are hammering to get out of the front now. The Dutchmen really have the advantage, having placed Eric Dekker in the counter-attack. It's also good for Mercury Viatel to have that man Leon Van Bon in the group too. But they have a pretty hard ride to get across to the leading group of 5 right now. 51 kilometers to go to the finish, and there's still an awful lot of climbing to do.
And seemingly not too many people around. They're certainly not in the countryside, because they're all more or less banned from it because of this problem with the cattle disease. So they have been told to stay in the villages as the race continues to course its way around this south corner of Holland.
This attack counter-attack here coming from Marcus Seberg. Here is Michele Bartoli trying to come out of the front of the main field too. And now we see a situation where Rabobank are on the defensive because they're pretty happy with the position of Eric Decker off the front. Looks like Bortolami coming forward there. That, in fact, is Lance Armstrong in second position right now. The first time we've seen him moving to the front of the pack.
Just on 50 kilometres left to go, and the American winner for the last 2 years of the Tour de France has hit the front here, giving himself a perfect workout. Nice bit of speed work, flicks his arm, calls through Gianluca Bortolami, winner so well this year of the Tour de Flanders, got himself the lead in the World Cup competition. That's gone now to Roman Weinsteins after his great ride in Paris-Roubaix.
Bortolami not getting any help here. You see Rabobank are very clever in the tactics they adopt, but Michele Bartoli's not too happy about it. He's going to leap straight out of the group. This is where he gets his nickname from, Il Gatto, the cat, because he likes to pounce just at the right minute. He was trying to pounce on the back end of the motorbike there. Many of these riders try and use the television motorbike as a launch pad to attack. They try and catch the driver unawares, and then the guy is maybe in the wrong gear and tries to accelerate. He accelerates slowly with his motorbike, but the rider will get just a little bit of a pull and then catapult himself off the front of the main field.
And so the riders now still counter-attacking every move here. That's Van Bonn again on the front for Holland. And another Rabobank attacker coming now on the left of our picture. And this is this Bogart who's launched an attack?
Difficult to see. It looks as if it might still be Eric Decker trying to go out of the front again on the attack.
Well, he's certainly making a long one of this. He's trying desperately to get a little group working away together here now. And there's plenty of riders willing to chase down. It can't be long now before they shake this bunch up, because these attacks are going to come so fast. The problem is the riders won't... And look at the situation now. Because of the attacks, they have split this bunch up all over the highway.
It's hard to call it a bunch right now. It's more like a chasing group. There are very few riders left in this Amstel Gold Race. And the fact that there aren't so many people out here today watching the race is because the organisation and the government have asked people to stay away because of this foot and mouth. And they've done a great job in actually being able to put the race on in a situation where over the last 15 days, Phil, we've heard so many rumours about whether it would or would not take place.
Yes, and the public have clearly heeded the warnings, and they're doing the right thing here. And it is Eric Decker who has come through, looks over. This is the mixing time now, when the boys are starting to get very frisky, testing quickly the weaker ones. Bartoli here looking around all over the place. Schmill goes through. They must have wiped out the breakaway. There's Fred. So we're all together now.
Well, that must have been pretty rapid indeed, because the last time check we got was around about 50 seconds. But it is all completely back together right now. There's Vinokurov, little rider from Team Telecom there. An excellent ride last week for him in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Freddie Rodriguez is there. Armstrong is there himself. It's the first chance we've really got to see Armstrong this year, although he did have an 8th place in the Semana Catalana. This is Michele Bartoli out of the front again, very aggressive.
And doing the right thing. He's on the cycle path here, which of course you can't ride on the road in normal occasions. It would be illegal for a cyclist. And Bartoli attacking now on what is a slight rise. Good place to choose. Going to keep the huge effort. The yellow flag means danger because the road narrows. It's yellow for danger in Europe. And there's why. You have to breathe in deeply. And there's a bit of a scurry here now, somewhat panic, as they try to answer Bartoli's rather sharp-looking attack there.
Well, he's got a mean acceleration, Michele Bartoli, but you can see all of the time Rabobank are putting men up there just to try and keep control. This looks like Michael Bogert now coming off the front of the group. He's countered the move by Michele Bartoli, but I think he's going to have a hard call to try and ride to the finish on his own at this pace.
And he's listened to you because he's sat up to see if any little group can come and join him. Bogart knows what it's like to win the Amstel Gold Race. Bartoli also there.
On the left-hand side there with the large helmet and the grey jersey is Johan Museo. So it's good to see Museo riding so well here. It's the race that he's enjoyed in the past, and Freddie Rodriguez is not enjoying it at all because he has popped.
Yes, it's interesting to see Museo there. He didn't enjoy his ride in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, that's for sure. Now, the group has thinned out under this flurry of attacks, but there are still a lot of riders here willing to give it their best shot. And a lot of riders from Rabobank, again, launching attack after attack at the front now. They've got enough men here, too, to try and weaken this and hopefully get one away. 4 of them clear now. This is Museo bringing them round at a tremendous speed. It's an interesting move, this, by Johan Museeuw. I didn't expect to see him in the thick of the action in this event.
Well, he has won this event in the past. That was back in 1994 when he was really at the height of his classic campaign. He's a man, I think, who has won nearly every one of the classics except Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He was the man of the 90s for the one-day classic seasons. And I think now, after the performance in Paris-Roubaix, he must be looking to try and get himself another one-day victory. And in fact, I'd have to look back very carefully through the years, Phil, to see if there was a year when Johan Museeuw hadn't won a one-day classic.
Well, I can't help you on that, Paul, so you have to do it yourself, because I don't know. But he certainly has been a wonderful bike rider, I certainly know that. And a great man to talk to as well. His English isn't that great, but on the other hand, he always has interesting things to say. And now he's in second place here, still on the attack, trying to break the attention of the big field.
Eric Decker was the man launching the attack with Museeuw in second position. This looks like one of the big Cofidis riders coming across here, and that is more than likely going to be Chris Pearce.
It is indeed. He's a man that deserves a good success. He reads the moves so well. He hasn't quite latched on yet, but this man will do one day, and it looks as though we've got an interesting man in this breakaway.
The third man in line, I think, is a rather interesting man to see riding well in the classics. That's Lance Armstrong. Something so far that Jan Ullrich has failed to do is to show in the early season classics.
But Lance is pulling quite a face there as he tried to hang on to the wheel of Johan Museeuw. Looked over for a little bit of assistance, slipping back from the main break, but there's four of them clear just now. And looking to see if anybody can join them. Sweeping descent at the speed of Museeuw coming down. Chris Pearce in second place, Armstrong. And they are the first three riders on the road. And there's the whole field is freewheeling back on. No, maybe not. Maybe this may be the start of the move.
Good move by Johan Museeuw. In fact, if you talk to Lance Armstrong about the men who he really respects in the sport of professional cycling, one of the men in the top 3 or 4 names he'll give you is Johan Museeuw. Eric Decker leading through one of these small Dutch towns very far to the front. There's Peter van Pieterkem, Mercury Viatel going through there. Armstrong, very attentive ride by Armstrong right now, keeping himself right up near the front of the pack. Museeuw is there.
Berg is there too, the champion. He's also a Rabobank man. Don't be fooled by his national champions jersey of Switzerland, because he is the champ. Here comes Bogert again. Looks at everybody disdainfully because somebody left the door open. Might well have been Andre Schmil there. But anyway, Bogert's going to close it down. This bunch all of a sudden has reduced rather dramatically. There's a bigger bunch even further back, but this little group here might get across.
This is quite a serious speed here as we head up through now towards the climbs. We'll be coming fairly shortly, Phil, to the Kutteberg. That comes around about 27 kilometers to go to the finish. It climbs up 22%, and in the past it's a climb which has been absolutely mad with the crowd that come out to see it. This year I expect it will be almost devoid of spectators.
Well, I think you're right, because they won't be allowed to go up there. That's about 10 miles ahead as we continue on the road here, and it looks as though all the damage slowly being repaired.
Christian van der Velde
to the back there.
Christian van der Velde moving forward there as well. Michele Bartoli at the rear end of the group right now. The pace is certainly exceptionally high. This is Armstrong accelerating at the moment up one of these climbs, trying to split the group.
Well, this is the first big attack from Lance, and he's launched it in that low cadence he pedals at now. 42, 43 kilometers to go at this point as Armstrong puts in an attack. Any takers is the big question.
Well, anybody who can respond to that is going to be pretty good. Somebody's coming hauling across the gap right now.
I'm not sure. It looks like Eddie Mazzolini who's come across here from Vini Calderola.
It is in fact Eddie Mazzolini who's come across. Let's just take a look at that one more time. Armstrong riding at the front of the main field. Actually, it doesn't really look like much of an attack, Phil. He was in first position. He's just pedaling quite hard on the pedals, keeping the cadence high. But what happens is the guys behind actually basically sit up, and he continues with his efforts.
It is amazing, because we have just seen about 10 or 12 kilometers of absolute full-on attacking, everybody countering the moves, bringing everybody back together again. Lance has hit them in exactly the right moment, because there were 3 bunches there. They come back together, nobody willing to launch an attack because they're tired. Lance has sensed that, and he might have chosen well. And Mazzolini somewhere has found his legs here to get across to Lance Armstrong. Now, Mazzolini and Lance Armstrong's cycling reputations are vastly different, and yet Mazzolini's gone for Lance and joined him.
Well, the important thing when a big star like Lance Armstrong attacks is to be on the wheel as quickly as possible, because if you don't, you will never make the distance up again. Armstrong on a titanium bicycle there. He's in fact just put his earpiece in to get into communication with his team manager, Johan Brunel, from behind. But the big losers right now, Phil, are Rabobank. They're going to be put on the defensive again and have to do a lot of work on the front of the main field, because you dare not let a man like Armstrong get too much of an advantage.
Well, there is the man we've waited a long time to see him in our television pictures. At this stage of this season, we haven't seen him at all in 2001, but he's there now, and he's put in an excellent attack, and Mazzolini's ready. Well, Mazzolini's only ever won 2 races, both of those last year, a stage of the Tour of Romandy in Switzerland, and also a stage of the Tour of Switzerland itself. He is, in fact, an Italian.
Well, Van Petegem in this next group on the road, as is Schmiel. Amazing to see Schmiel in the second group, because he's been involved in an awful lot of attacks, and Eric Decker pulls himself back up. And in fact, notice that Michael Bogard there just dropped off the back of the group there to pace his men into the group as well. So they're playing a very tactical game today, our Rabobank, Phil. Now they've got 2 men in this group, but they never should have gotten caught out by that move by Lance Armstrong.
No, they've got 3 men, Paul. There's Bogart, as you say. There's 3 riders up in this group for Rabobank, and now they've got to make a quick decision, because gone in the distance are these 2 riders. No time checks coming yet, but they're quite clearly over half a minute ahead, I would say, of the field. And Armstrong was the man who caused the attack, and Mazzolini was the man who spotted it, and the others let him go.
He's caused that group behind to split again. That's a very select group of riders on Moto 2 chasing him down, and you can see as they wind their way down that descent just after Lance Armstrong, they can't be very much more than about 25 seconds behind right now. And Eddie Mazzolini has decided he's going to come to the front and work with the man who's been the champion of the Tour de France for the last 2 years. Armstrong, though, looks like a man possessed today. He's got incredible pedaling action, keeping that cadence of his very high indeed, pushing the pace. This is for him a very important test, and the way Armstrong rides nowadays, Phil, he chooses certain objectives throughout the season, but when he does come to race, he races full on.
He likes to test himself. His thoughts not winning at Amstel Gold, but winning the Tour de France. That's his main singular objective. Here is Eric Decker, who won 3 stages of the race last year when Lance won the big race itself. And Eric now having to do a lot of work here. A bit slow to get onto the group he was, but on the group he now is. Also in this group is Johan Museo, André Schmiel, Chris Piers is there, Christian van der Velde it is. This is the group now which is assembling a very select chase group, and at the back there Van der Velde is going to remain a passenger. He's going to help no one.
In this group as well, I caught a glimpse of Davide Rebellin, a good favourite for a circuit like this, especially with the fact that there are a couple of climbs within the last 10 kilometres. Armstrong coming up alongside Eddie Mazzolini, who will have given him a word of encouragement there, saying, well, come on, let's work together. We've got a chance here to build up a large advantage. Armstrong nowadays, having spent a long time in Europe, fairly conversant in French and in Italian as well as Spanish, which he obviously uses quite a bit racing down there in Texas.
Mazzolini taking a look over his shoulder. He better not lose the concentration, because he needs that back wheel of Armstrong, who is driving again up a climb here with all of his power, pedaling a low gear and just sitting there with great pedaling. The rainbow jersey sleeve edges there as a former world champion. That is his right. And the riders here in this group are using this little climb of the Lourberg to try and split the field, and this might be a decisive chase, and Museo has missed the split.
Well, they're trying to nail back that leading group of riders, which contains Decker and Bogard. All kinds of urgency in this group behind. There's Bortolami in 4th position there. You can see the big, strong style of him rolling about on the bike. Well, a lot of riders at the back of that group in difficulty. This is Rebellin moving off the front, but they're about to get caught, I think, Phil, by a larger group of around about 20 riders or so.
Yeah, I think half the riders dropped earlier have just come on that climb, in fact. And we have a much bigger bunch here now as David Rebellin sets the pace briefly, drops away off the back. So this is going to become a much more concentrated main field now. But still, the 2 riders are clear at the front.
Decker now put into the role of defender, trying to pull the team back up to the front. They'll be working as hard as they can, but I think for Van der Velde, it's boom, boom, and out go the lights. It wasn't Van der Velde, actually.
No, it's George Hincapie, Paul. He's done a lot of work today, let's be fair. He has set this up today. It's becoming evident now for a late attack by Armstrong. George out in front for a long, long way today. There's nothing left now. his job done. Time to get ready for a shower and hope that his team captain can finish it off. He is now in the breakaway with Eddie Mazzolini, and the main field, well, what's left of the main field, showing signs of stress. An attack now by Zeberg.
Van Bon, another rider, going out of the back of this group because of the pressure on the front of the main field by the Rabobank team, and of course by Davide Rebellin in the black jersey there with the yellow sleeves. He's very much present at the front of this pack. He's waiting for a new group to go forward. In third position there, we just caught a sign there of Michael Bogard. This is another one of the unnamed climbs in this part of the Amstel Gold Race. Armstrong absolutely flying today. Obviously, Phil, his first major rendezvous of the day, and I'd have to say for the moment it's 10 out of 10.
He attacks everything with such enthusiasm. It's all part of the big plan to look for the fitness to give him the Tour de France. You remember when he won the Tour de France first time? This was the race he chose, and he was beaten to the victory by Bogart. And now again we are seeing an attack by Rabobank once more. And this is Decker again, isn't it?
Decker again coming off the front, trying to take the pressure off his teammates here. It's a big question to try and ride across a gap, especially when a man like Lance Armstrong is absolutely hammering at the front. He doesn't look super good today, Eric Decker. He seems to be rolling about on the bars just a little bit. He was oh so close a couple of weeks ago to winning the Tour of Flanders. He came into the photo finish there, just a late burst. If he'd judged his sprint just a little bit better, he may well have been first over the line. But in the photo finish, the result on that day went to Gianluca Bortolami. But he's a courageous bike rider, Phil, and very much changed this season.
Well, he's setting himself a time trial now, and he's still not impossible to catch the leaders. The gap is not that big just yet. Decker was the time trial champion, in fact, of the Netherlands in 1996, so he's a good lone rider. Let's see if he can get across. There's the two leaders on the left. Round the right-hand bend now for Eric Decker. It's not so long ago, in fact, that the two leaders went through there. He's committed now. He's done something nobody else has been able to do for these past few kilometres. He's got away. He gave it 100% on that hill. He hurt himself, but I think that was the only way to shake the limpets in the back group.
Well, he looks very low in the saddle right now, but I tell you one thing, the movement that he's coming out with are very useful. He's pushing the pace very high indeed, touching 50 kilometers an hour. He has got a pursuit, in fact, in front of him right now to try and catch these two riders. Armstrong, though, is absolutely flying. Eddie Mazzolini's having a hard time staying with the Texan.
Let's look at the face here and the concentration of Lance Armstrong. He always seems to be riding a short frame, Lance, but he gets a lot of power through that body. And the gap we're hearing now is only 20 seconds, so in fact Decker is coming up. But that looks a bit more than 20 seconds, maybe not. It's hard to tell with our cameras here, but right round that top bend are the two leaders. Back to the main chase, and that's Michele Bartoli here. He's got himself a Rabobank police escort now because they're slowing off the main field. They don't want to chase it now. Clearly they wanted Decker to make the move.
It's strange that they're giving their advantage over to Decker, because Decker's done a lot of work in this group so far, Phil. I would have thought the man to come out of the pack should have been Michael Bogard. He's a man who took the victory here a couple of years ago, just ahead of Lance Armstrong. He is taking a lot of risks. The last time we saw him go round one of those corners, though, I thought he was going to cook it, because he really went round there at full speed, hardly touching the brakes at all. His position right now does not look brilliant at all, but it seems to be working for him. Ooh. He's 24 seconds behind the Cop group, the leading group of riders, which is Armstrong and Mazzolini, and it would be more interesting, I think, to see just how far behind the main field were.
And here they are up ahead, a little bit more than we thought, but he is absolutely flying. You've got an idea from the camera work there just how fast Decker is going. And the back of the field now, it looks as though Bartoli is getting a bit upset with the escort of Rabobank. He's trying to shake something out of this chase group. They've got to do it fairly quickly. We're somewhere in the region of 25 miles still to go to the finish in Maastricht. Decker has taken flight. There are two leaders up the road, and